cycling fans everywhere. This is Jake Sanderson, aka Snowman Cycling, and I'm back with another Zwift race recap video for you. And this week I wanted to try something a little bit different. I wanted to try a bigger field race. We all know that the summer Zwift racing events are pretty quiet, especially when I tend to race usually in the middle of the day. So I thought we would mix this one up and do a prime time Zwift race with a big field against some seriously strong sea riders, and see if it's any harder in these big field races and how they compare against the small field races. And so we set off with just under 40 riders, and this is a route that I've never done before. This is stage 1 of the Z Racing Sea Breeze series, and it's going coastal. So a route that I've never done before, so I was really excited to try this one out. And I was thinking, because this one is so flat, it's probably likely to end in a nice group bunch sprint. My favourite kind of race finish on Zwift, which is perfect for us. But as you can see at this point, we've already had a couple of attacks go off the front, and unfortunately for me, it's just not going to be that straightforward. This one is absolutely chaotic and chocked full of carnage. And that look on my face that you just saw right there was a man that is checking Zwift power to see what his competition is like, especially the 3 riders off the front. And unfortunately for me, one of those riders off the front not only has a really good sprint, which worries me, but they've also got a 4.4 watt per kilo 20-minute average power, so I know that they're really, really strong. And if they get away and TT off the front of this group, they're going to run away with it. So when one rider, Jay Ballard, bridges up, then we make the decision to bridge up as well. And that kicks off a sequence that ends up being one of the more defining moments of this race, where everything splits apart and the whole race changes shape. And not only up against strong riders, I can see from Jay Ballard there doing 9 watts per kilo sprint, then 0 watts per kilo, and then back up to 9, and then rinse and repeating that in a microburst technique fashion. I tend not to call out these cheaters in my videos too often, but I just can't ignore it. I've seen so many of them recently doing this microbursting technique that I simply have to mention it. And this rider's data is private, so I can't have a look and see if they're doing sticky watts as well. But we can clearly see that they're doing this microbursting technique. And that is an illegal pedaling style. That's not just my opinion. In the rules for the big racing events like Zwift Racing League via WTRL and a lot of the other series also, like ladder racing. And the reason for that is they ban unrealistic pedaling styles. So in real life, you would never, ever, ever pedal like that. There's no way you would ever hit 9 watts per kilo and then coast at 0 and then hit 9 again. It's just inefficient. It just doesn't make any sense. You would never do it. So why on earth you'd be doing it in a Zwift race other than to gain an unfair advantage? I cannot explain. Okay, that's enough from me about micro bursting for this video. But let me know, do you want me to go more into depth on these sorts of things in other videos? Do you want me to call out cheating when I see it? Let me know down below. Now back in the race, there's some really weird tactical decisions going on here from some riders. You might have seen those chat messages as they're cropping up, but this front group, this diminished front group, seems to think that it's a breakaway. And they're encouraging each other to pull, rotate through, take turns to stay away from the group behind. Now, whilst that may have been true that it was a breakaway when there were 3 riders, when a third of the field crops up to you, it just becomes a reduced front group. There's no breakaway. You're stronger than the riders that got dropped behind. You don't need to worry about staying away from them if they got dropped and they can't come back at this point. Even if they do manage to get back on, they're going to have used so much energy, and they probably didn't have that much strength to begin with if they got dropped at that point. So the only reason you would ever really care about these riders coming back is if you think that there's some really good sprinters in the group behind and you're going to lose a few places. But it just seems so unlikely. There just seems absolutely no reason to be working together here. And if these riders want to do that and burn their energy, I'm all for it. Go ahead, help me out. And as we saw there, for some reason, these riders seem to think that the 30-second mark is a magical number, and as long as we have 30 seconds over the riders behind, we'll be okay. But I just don't understand. I just don't really see the logic here. So I'm happy for these riders to work, tire themselves out, and take me closer to my favoured sprint finish, if that's what it's going to be. But spoiler alert, unfortunately for me, that's not what happens, and the chaos and the carnage is still yet to come in this one. But at this moment in particular, I'm feeling okay. I'm feeling like the pace and the energy has gone out of this group. They say that they're working together still, but it doesn't really feel like we're going particularly hard or particularly fast. And I'm definitely feeling like I've got a little bit more in the legs than I did when I was following those attacks earlier on. And we saw there again in the chat that 30-second mark comes up again. Somebody said, let's ease up, and the other guy said, no, we've only got 27 seconds. We need 30. And then one of the other riders said, It's okay, we can chill until the chasing group have a 20-second gap and then we need to get back on it. But this is just not true. That's why you shouldn't really listen to people that are talking in the chat too much. You should have a game plan that you think is going to work and you should stick to it. And when it comes down to game plans, I have to give it to the team Danish bike riders. There's 2 of them in this race and they had a plan and they put it into effect and it was really, really good. So we've got to give them the credit for this one. The first rider, Klaus Moller, he's the one, or one of the guys, that was saying for the group to rotate and take turns. But this is probably why, because he wanted you to use energy. And then he knew at the 5-kilometer mark, almost bang on it, he was going to launch it and go. So I bridge up to him because at this point, if anybody gets away, it's probably game over. And I elect to give him a couple of turns because we have a pretty big gap of about 50 meters. And most importantly for me, the one rider that I don't want to be here, Ryan Underwood, the 4.4 watt per kilo 20-minute rider, isn't there. However, having said that, unfortunately for me, he realises before too long and he bridges up as well. So at this point, there's 3 of us off the front, the Danish bike rider, myself and Underwood. And it's potentially going to go to the finish, knowing that this Underwood guy can do 5.3 watt per kilo for 5 minutes. If he elects to just burn it there, we're just going to have to sit on and try and hold on as best as we can. And as we can see here, the gap's opening up a little bit as he comes to the front and he elects to pull. So myself and Mola sit on, we decide to do what we can here. But before we know it, Ryan Underwood realises that he is dragging us along and there's no particular reason to be doing that. So he eases up a little bit there as well, lets another rider come to the front and the pace eases straight up out of this group. And the chasers are tantalisingly close behind. So I elect to ease up here knowing that they're definitely going to catch. And I want to be careful of any counters that happen. So I elect to ease up here, save a little bit of energy. And this is where Danish bike riders really nailed their plan, because as soon as we're caught, Nicolin goes over the top and his friend Klaus Moller tells him to go, 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 hit it, hit it, hit it. So they clearly had this one planned. And that was the last possible point I wanted anybody to attack. I was really hurting at this point, so really did not want to see that. So genius move from those guys. You have to take your hat off to that one. And it very, very nearly gets away. Ryan Underwood goes straight onto the wheel, and thankfully for me, he pulls me up a little bit. But I can see that his power and Nicolin's power are too far apart. Nicolin is only going to be gaining here, and the group behind, more importantly, is just about to catch us. So as they catch us, as Underwood eases up, I elect to burn it as hard as I can, hit the sprint gas, and just go, 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 try and get onto Nicolin's wheel, because the power he's doing at this point is so good. With only 2 kilometers left in this race, he could easily stay away here. And as I look behind, I see that Underwood and co are not following, so I know that he's probably hurting. I know he's probably burned a few too many matches, and he's hoping someone else is going to do the work, or this group is going to catch us. So at that point, I know this is a great move, but I'm killing myself to get onto his wheel here. Nicolin is really going for it, and I have to give him credit because it was just almost impossible. But eventually, I managed to bridge my way up and get almost onto his wheel. At this point, I'm thinking, should I give him a turn or should I not give him a turn? We're far enough ahead of the riders behind that I would like this gap to stick, especially with that Underwood guy just behind us. As we can see in the chat that the chasers behind realise they've got a problem with 2 riders off the front who look like they're just going to go as hard as they can until the finish. And it's only 1.3 kilometers to go now, so I'm happy for Nicolin to just lead me out as best as he can, try and take me to within, I don't know, 500 metres of the finish. And if we get to within 500 metres of the finish, I'm going to feel really confident that I can get this one, because the guys behind are going to have had to have put in such a big load of energy to catch us. And I've actually got a couple of options here. I'm considering just going now as hard as I can, because I can probably sustain it to the finish because we've already got the 30-metre gap. I'm also considering waiting for the guys behind us to catch and then to just go over the top, kind of like how Nicolin did, and counter as soon as they go. But Nicolin realises that these guys are catching and he decides to go a bit harder. He senses a little bit of a gap. He thinks this could be his last chance to get away. And unfortunately for me, the last person I want to see at this point bridges up to us and gets onto my wheel as Underwood is still here. I haven't gotten rid of him yet. Which means with only 500 metres left, we're heading for a 3-up sprint. There's nothing else for it. The group behind probably isn't going to catch, so I just get onto Underwood's wheel, let him use his power up, I deploy mine, and then boom, here we go. Everything we've got out the saddle. Ali, 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 just go, go, go. Try and get the head down, try and empty the legs. Don't worry too much about the riders behind because they're going to give it everything they've got to catch, so we have to empty the tank as well. And we manage to get a gap. Underwood is so demoralised, he just stops pedaling, ends up finishing 8th. We managed to hang on there, stay just out front as the riders come behind. Microburst Ballard manages to get 2nd place, and I fire off all the terrible celebrations I can think of in one go. So I was really pleased to get that one, especially with the caliber of riders that I was up against. And for me, when it comes down to what's harder, the bigger field or the smaller field races, well, the answer is both. The smaller field races have much less draft and it's much harder to stick on the wheels, and when people go, you have to cover it. When it comes to the bigger field races, it's much, much easier in the draft. Much, much easier in those big groups to have to do less effort at the back of the group whilst people are doing more effort at the front. When those decisive moves go, you have to go with them or you're going to be left for dead. And when we have a look at the normalised and average power for this one, we can see that we did have to work a bit harder than the average power suggests. So I hope you enjoyed that one as much as I did. What did you think of the tactics from the other riders? I especially like the DBR tactics there, I have to say. Thank you as always for watching. Like, comment, share, most importantly subscribe. And as always, race fast, ride hard, and remember that you are appreciated.